Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Usa Kentlabezo. I represent an entity called the Circle of Unity, but today I'm in my capacity as the moderator of what I believe is the second iteration of the Kasi Talks Dialogue, a program that's being run by the Kasi Talks, supported by Sarabhatma District Municipality and Absa Bank. The purpose of our attendance in the discussion today is to talk about what I've come to be expressed and informed is the digitization or the potential of digitizing the township economy and what could be done by fully leveraging and utilizing the various tools, assets, and aspects that are available. It's a timely talk, not just in the context of the rapid digitizing world. Anyone here who's used ChatGPT, I'm sure, has really been a little nervous at the potential. I know someone who asked on ChatGPT, please write me a breakup letter, and I was so sad because it was such a gentle and kind breakup letter. But there is a lot of tools that can be used to really get things going. And it's ever so important in the context of a township economy that's currently and always been rooted in the relationality between people and the familiarity of neighborhoods. So what could be done by fully adopting, embracing, and leveraging these tools? To what end can we drive them to really build the economy and have it claimed and owned by the residents within the space? And where are the avenues of synergy, collaboration, and partnership with corporate institutions, with bigger institutions that can help crystallize and concretize the base? We've got a wide array of speakers, some inspirational, kindly joined by a keynote speaker sitting next to me. I'll introduce a bit later. But we're going to go through a bit of a program, and I've been told I've been given some leeway to also create space for questions from the floor. And I'd like that to be something that's embraced by the participants, because we're in a nice warm space, and it's the conversation is really enriching by us talking to each other and not just us here talking to you. But to kick things off, I'd like to hand over to the portfolio chairperson of Local Economic Development and Planning in Makhanda Municipality, Councillor Mzomanzi Nkwencha, to do the official welcoming today. Councillor?
Good afternoon to everyone. I just prepared a few remarks here that I'll read from. We've gathered here to discuss on the township economy in the fourth industrial revolution context. I've sought to rather take a different approach to the topic by attempting to lay a foundation of the discussion rather than dealing with the topic. My remarks are premised on the topic of structural challenges of the South African economy in the context of Makhanda local economy. The reason I've done this is because our local economy is arguably a microcosm of the South African economy, given that it is an economy that heavily relies on the tertiary sector, your retail, your financial sector, education, the judiciary, government, the tourism industry, creative arts, and transportation. Secondly, our township economy needs to have a full appreciation of the character of the South African economy. The South African economy is a tertiary-based economy that employs over 90% of the people in the labor market in South Africa, which heavily requires highly skilled people. Therefore, meaning that less than 10% is reserved for the primary sector, which is agriculture, and secondary sector, which is manufacturing, etc., making the unemployment rate a difficult sketch to fight in the process of automation or digitalization of all industries within our economy. The Makhanda economy is ravaged by high unemployment rate, high levels of inequality and poverty. Therefore, any digitalization and automation needs a phased approach in line with the demographics of Makhanda. Just briefly, the South African government post the democratic breakthrough rapidly integrated our economy into the global economy, as the South African economy was one of the most industrialized economies in Africa. Therefore, the effect of globalization was the following. Globalization came with the speedy introduction of the services sector in our economy that is low-skilled, owing to the history of apartheid education system. Post-democracy, many industries in the primary and secondary sector did not invest their capital into the South African economy. They kept it in banks and shares, meaning the financial sector and insurance sector grew with a low-skilled labor force. So there was an investment strike, so to speak. Thirdly, the lack of employment due to structural adjustment of the economy has resulted in high levels of unemployment rate and poverty, resulting in high levels of crime that further discourages foreign and domestic investments into our economy. The period of globalization resulted in deindustrialization of productive sectors such as agriculture and manufacturing, leaving the rural and township economy to be heavily dominated by retail or informal trading. And unfortunately, that retail being the sale of alcohol, Mr. Du, creating a crisis of substance abuse in our communities. However, optimism compels us that in every crisis exists an opportunity. That is why today we are meeting here to redefine the township economy towards reindustrialization and reclaiming of the retail sector to South African citizens in our townships. Whilst we appreciate that we have a small open economy that attracts foreign investors, we however should use economic protectionist policies that will protect some industries against foreign investor domination. Bluntly put, we must protect the retail sector in our townships from the people whom are now termed my friends. The Makhanda local economy is the second biggest economy in Sarabatman district, with a gross value added contribution of 27%. The following figures are important to note. In 2021, Mr. Abes, the consumer consumption grew by 4.2% to 5 billion rands. Our economy is indicative that our economy is very consumptive. However, what is important to note is that given that our retail sector is largely dominated by all my friends, that means our local economy has a substantial leakage instead of the 5 billion circulating within our local economy. Hence why we need to reclaim our township economy that evidently has a buying power of close to 5 billion rands. Secondly, the agricultural sector contributes about 18% to the South African gross domestic product, which is the productivity of the economy. Within the jurisdiction of Makhanda local municipality and Sarabatman district, we have thousands of hectares of land, arable land, but very minimal young black people are entering the space. And none of us young people are participating in that sector that is largely labor absorbent. Furthermore, the Makhanda local municipality has 8 commonage farms that it leases to small-scale farmers who want to grow in the agricultural space. We encourage more people to make use of such resources that can take us from a small-scale or start-up farmer to big commercial farmers, so that we can create jobs and be suppliers of food in the retail sector in our township economy that we so want to reclaim. Lastly, the Makhanda local municipality has many natural resources that need readily available deployment of capital and labor to bring local economic growth, such as kaolin mine, brick manufacturing, and related resources, aloe and arable land, as argued earlier, as a way of reindustrializing our rural and township economy, as many households are expanding and public infrastructure works are underway. We must use our local resources to bring about local economic growth, and that is what has informed our 2023-2024 Integrated Development Plan and the LED and planning projects for the financial year. In those many words, I'm welcoming you to our local economy. Welcome, and I wish this networking opportunity unqualified success. Lastly, we are emerging from the special council meeting of Makhanda local municipality, and I prepared those notes with no prior knowledge of what may be said in the special council meeting. And the executive mayor has used her prerogative that she derived from the Municipal Systems Act to reconstitute what is termed the Mayoral Executive Committee. And because of that, she has made changes. I'm no longer the portfolio head of LED. However, I did make extend an invitation to Councillor Roy, who is now the local economic development and planning portfolio head, so that I can introduce him to business people. It's not the perfect setting of introducing him, but nonetheless, this is also a business, and I thought I should extend that invitation. Hopefully, he can do the closure as a portfolio head now. I'm no longer in that seat. Thank you very much. Thank you. Welcome, everybody.
Thank you very much, former portfolio chair, Mzobanzi. I'm so glad I got to be the first to say that. And welcome, Councillor Oyi. If you could just wave your hand for anyone to see. Councillor, the new portfolio chairperson of LED. I'd say you've got big shoes to fill, but I know on personal record, Councillor Mgwenja only wears a size 7, so you should be fine. But really, we're looking forward to working with you as local partners in the city towards developing the local economic development space and what it means. Before we proceed further, just some quick administrative announcements. There's some water distributed across the area. I'm sure it's available. Please have a bottle. If anyone's looking for the bathrooms, they're over there on that side, so you can find them over there. And I've been informed that someone who came in a Nissan Baki registration KDK 897EC, currently your Baki is just blocking the door. So if you'd be so kind as to move it so that someone can exit as quickly as possible, that would be great. That's KDK 897. Thanks, Councillor Mgwenja, too, for your, I'd like to call it socio-economic and socio-political contextualization of the space. I do think part of it, too, is also recognizing that the premise of the rural economy, the township economy, has organically always been this collaborative, inclusive, and collective sense of duty to protecting the space. And I mark it as a space that also requires us to be quite nuanced how we navigate the dynamic of foreign nationals in the space and what they mean, particularly because in many areas they played a very vital role in retaining and keeping it. So it's around building South Africa to be a welcoming space. If there's any sort of economy that really is good at doing that, it's a kasi. If you are home, you're home. You know the person 2 streets down, and it's very different from other spaces. And that's such a unique and special factor of the economy. We're going to move right along to one of the representatives from Kasi Talks, Dialogues and Solves the Business, Mr. Siamantla, to tell us a bit more why you're here, what drove you to do this, why it's so important to you. Over to you, Dad.
I'm an entrepreneur myself. I'm a black industrialist. I run a fair trade port Elizabeth. I've got a couple of small businesses in the township. And it's a space that I've got extreme passion for. I think I just want to make that declaration up front. And I think that's going to explain perhaps the reason why we're here today and the reason why we've got this program called Makhanda Talks Business. So I think in my olden days when I used to work, I was an engineer and I started running business in the township. And when I stopped working formally, I thought, look, I want to explore this space, you know. And to my surprise, though, as we were going around, you know, networking, looking for business opportunities, I actually realized that no one was talking about the township economy. It was a misnomer. I even remember that when I wanted to do my thesis at my BA level, I was told that there's no such a thing called the township economy. There's no literature that supports that. So they actually rejected my proposal. So that made me a bit bitter, to be honest, because I wanted to prove that there is an economy. We grew up in the township and it has always been a very buzzing environment in terms of economic activity. Whether you want to classify it as a survivalist type of business, informal, transitioning, it doesn't matter. You know, business is business. There's a customer, there's economic value that needs to be added. So Makhanda Talks Business emanated from that type of frustration that we had no space to express ourselves. So in the context of SMMEs in South Africa, it has always been perceived as it's a homogeneous thing. You know, if you are a small business, your issues that you are experiencing in the township are same as a small business that is sitting in Sandton. And that is far from reality because there are dynamics in the township that needs to be taken into account. So the solution for us was that, look, perhaps we are not represented in the mainstream agenda in terms of the SMMEs, predominantly that are based in the township. So we need to create our own vehicle. And the vehicle, of course, the purpose for it is simple, you know, to create an environment where there is a conducive dialogue first. Because, you know, if you don't talk about it, we're not going to understand the opportunity that exists, which everybody else sees, beside the role players and the people that are participants in the township. So that was the first issue, that we needed to create an opportunity of inclusive dialogue. Let the people in the township actually have an opportunity to express and define what they think about this township economy, because it has always been a concept. It's a very popular concept now that everybody's talking about it, but it's always coming from the top to the bottom. So the vehicle called Makhanda Talks Business as a non-profitable or NPC as they call it, is to firstly create an opportunity for township entrepreneurs themselves to have a conversation about the space that they are in, right? The second issue is to say we want to be the people who are actually telling the stories about the township business success. That means the enterprises that have emerged in the township, the entrepreneurs themselves that are doing great stuff in the township. Because if we are not the ones to advocate for such things, it means that the undermining of the potential of the township economy space will remain being perpetual. It's not challenged, and that is what we want to do. I mean, I like to make this example that if I look at Theo, who's a friend of mine, Batu, you know, the guy started making or selling shoes. You know, the boot of his car. You know, he used to go around in the townships, and today he owns about 35 stores. He employs about 200 people, and he's unapologetic about where he comes from. He's unapologetic about the buying power, the people who are buying his product. So that is really why we are here today, is to go on a campaign to talk about the opportunities in the township, to create a conducive environment where local entrepreneurs and the support stakeholders, when I talk about the support stakeholders, you see we've got ABSA here. So it's a deliberate thing because there is a big room for stakeholders to play within the township economy space. But the only difference now is that the conversation emanates from the role players. So we are telling ABSA, Sarapatman, and any other big corporate that this is what we want to achieve. And this is how we see things going from the township economy space. And I think one of the important things, that is why obviously government is also involved, because government has got a serious responsibility, whether you talk of preservation of the space, whether you talk of in terms of regulation. I mean, almost 30 years in democracy, there is no policy that regulates, or there is no policy that talks about the development of the township economy. And yet it is a point of interest in terms of services, in terms of growth, because these are underdeveloped areas. The need for growth is there. So that growth cannot be separated from economic inclusion. So hence that there should have been from day one a direct and deliberate interest to regulate that space, to say what economic activities we need to develop and obviously advocate for in the township. So that's basically the issue. And so we want to go across the country. That's what we are doing. That's why, in Nelson Mandela Bay, we are here, and we'll be going all over the country to create the dialogue. Because post the dialogue, obviously there's support services that everybody is familiar with, but the only challenge is that all of those interventions, in our observation, they are uncoordinated. All right? So everybody comes in, they want to, with the best intention, but the reality is the reason why we're not seeing significant output out of it is because it's uncoordinated. So I think the primary focus for us is to create that conducive environment where there is a dialogue. We start talking about the needs of the township economy, the entrepreneurs and the enterprises. And then moving forward from that is that we are of the view that we will then be able to formalize interventions, and we talk to the relevant people that must come and assist us, whether it's government, big corporate, because these are all stakeholders that have got responsibility in terms of advocating and promoting the township economy space. So before I conclude, I always want to make this observation because it proves a point that perhaps we as the role players in the township, we are also not aware of the economic opportunity that exists in the township. And I always, when I do these talks and ask people, do you know how many townships are in this country? And I can bet, there will be very few people here who will be able to tell me that, because I'm actually going to give you an opportunity. How many townships do we have in this country? Yes.
1 to 7.
And
127.
Okay, so let me tell you, there's 533 townships in this country. Gauteng has got the biggest population of the townships. Firstly, so if we want to talk about the economic opportunity that exists, we need to know how many townships are in this country. We need to know the population. There's over 30 million people that live in the township in this country. That's half of the population of the country. If you look at, obviously, the urban and the rural setup. So 50% of the population lives in the township. So that's quite significant. It tells you that there is population which is followed by economic activity. That's how it is in the literature of economics. If you don't have the population, the chances are you're not going to have such high turnover in terms of economic opportunities. So I just want to also highlight before I conclude, because I like to put context, because then the argument then has to be, is township economy a real economy? So if you look at within the profile of real economies, so I want to give you guys some context in terms of what we should know about the township economy in terms of its potential, in terms of its size, and it always fascinates me with the research that I'm doing. And let me also declare, guys, that this is not information that is written officially. This is information I've been gathering true marketers, because these are the people who are mining the data to sell to big retail, big corporates. So I trust their information. Some of the literature that I've read from the IMF reports about the township economy, I've heard Councillor Abba talking about one of the primary sectors in the township being agriculture. I don't know any township that is got an agricultural base as its main economy. But that's all the literature tells you. It's agriculture, it's manufacturing. I don't know what they are manufacturing, but it's not the township that I know. So it just also talks about misinformation that is in the mainstream. So that's why I'm saying I'm quoting information. If you go and Google, you don't see it, you must know I'm getting it from marketers that sell information to retailers. So it fascinates me. So let's talk, for instance, about, this is just my context. So let's talk about, for instance, the fast food outlets. So they tell me that there's 50,000 that obviously recognized and registered outlets selling food. And they're telling me that the turnover of those, it contributes about 90 billion. You know, sometimes you might think this is not true, but we're talking about the townships across the country. So one of the fascinating that they mentioned to me is the issue of traditional medicine. And they said, you know, traditional medicine constitutes about 10 billion of revenue in the townships across the country. And we see Alama Mabatin some years ago, we don't take them seriously. So that's that. The biggest issue I know now, there's a big fight with KFC. They've introduced a quota, and somebody claiming that it was their concept. But the value chain of the quota business alone, I mean, when I talk about the value chain, is the bread, the chips, the oil, all of those things that go there. It's about, let me just tell you, they're talking about 10 billion. 10 billion rand. So I want to put context, because I ask myself as an entrepreneur, participant who's been running businesses in the township for the past 15 years, if those numbers are real, I should be a millionaire by now. But it also tells us that we also don't see the value. We're not focused. That's why we're not able to quantify these numbers. But I'm putting it out there. The biggest market that we've given away, which is the spaza shop market. They say there's over 100,000 recognized registered spazas with a combined turnover of 200 million. That's a lot of money. Are we trapping this money? Does it exist? Who is it empowering? I don't know, but it is for this type of conversation to answer those questions. So, hair and beauty salons. We even associate this type of business with certain people. That's how we've given the market away. The people who run salons and all of that. I mean, that constitutes quite a big amount of money, also 10 billion. That means people who are buying hair, nails, all these other things beside the haircuts. So that is the volume of income generation that comes from that primary activity. In an informal sector, so the taxi business, of course, we know it's one of the biggest in the township, which also generates about 50 billion rents. That we know because we see it on a day-to-day basis. I think the last example that I want to put across is the financial service sector in terms of stocks firm. Because everybody knows that there are stocks firm in the township. There's 8,000 of them that are registered, that are banking, with a combined savings of 5 billion. Now, we know how the stock firms operate, right? They save the money for a year, they take the money out, they go to ShopRite, they buy 25 kgs of all the things that they need, and then they consume all of that money. So if people say there is no savings scheme in the township, it's also not true. Because the stock firms do exist, and that's the amount of savings that is sitting in formal institutions, whether it's banks and etc. So I'm trying to emphasize the need for having these conversations. As Dasa Talks Business, that we felt that we needed to take the advocacy, we needed to take the lead in terms of research and development, we needed to take the lead in terms of exploring the opportunities in the township, so that aspiring entrepreneurs and those who are already in the space are able to focus themselves so that they they maximize on the opportunities that exist in the township. But if we don't talk about it, we don't see the value, and we wait for the formal enterprises or the formal economy to absorb the jobs and create the jobs that are much needed. Because as much as there's economic activity taking place in the township, the inverse is also true, that the majority of people are unemployed. 17% of the people working class in the townships are employed, but 77% is not. And the predominantly is young people. So the need for creating economic inclusion opportunities and supporting small businesses, whether they're in a transition phase in terms of being informal to formal to semi-formal, and obviously that they become formal at some point in time, it is a serious commitment that needs to be taken, as I indicated, seriously. And I believe that the stakeholders that are here and the entrepreneurs, they've got a serious responsibility to do this. Thank you.
I mean, again, just some of the prompting talks that inspired you to do your work. And this harnessing and focusing on this point of inclusive growth and really finding avenues to include oft-forgotten sects of the economy. You know, the Department of Trade and Industry manages a process, I guess I'll call it a process, of declaring certain areas special economic zones through an application process, and then there's obviously regulatory benefits you get. Based on the statistics you've given alone, which already have gaps, it's curious then about the potential of having a township area in and of itself declared such a space, purely if it's able to generate that much revenue. But at the same time, those numbers, and I think this is a point you're also alluding to, exist within a context where the cost of living is growing far faster and far more expensive than people's money is able to survive. And the Stokvel has roots in survival and being able to lean on the community as a point of access. But imagine what it could do if the context had shifted entirely and was geared towards forward growth and development for the people in townships. And I think this is what's so important about having spaces of dialogue and debate primarily, is that at least we reflect in the context of here, as we said in English, facts and the knowledge. But that we really find ways of leaning on each other from that point of community. We'll hand over now to someone from ABSA, one of the big sponsors and partners of this event, Ms. G.V. Buck, to talk a bit more about, again, why ABSA is so invested, why it's important for ABSA. It's one of the 3 banks that have been in Makhanda the longest. So I'm sure for local entrepreneurs, there's a point of access and interest as to your involvement. So please.
Just to give you background, we visited the Culture Talks New Brighton a couple months back, and we were inspired by the businesses sitting around the table and just having these conversations. And it was always that the banks are very traditional, we cannot approach the banks, and those are the topics that came out. And being an entrepreneur myself, I was very passionate about what Kasi Talks business is busy doing. And we all believe that banks, you cannot go to a bank, you cannot and go and ask for what you wanted. And for us to better understand the economy and what's happening, we decided let's go to the townships and hear the people, hear what their needs are, and see how we can best solution them. Because there is the traditional products out there, but not many people know what ABSA is actually doing for their young entrepreneurs. And that's part of our ED development funding that we do have. And it's not the traditional things. We want to be part of the Kasi Talks business. We want to be part of growing businesses. We want to see where the needs are and how we can get involved. Not just the traditional way of having to open your bank account and you come in and depositing and making transactions with the bank. But also, how do we nurture you, grow you, and take your hand and walk this road with you? What other things can we put in place? How do we mentor young businesses to actually be the big businesses out there? How do we get businesses to network with other businesses? And that's the passion, and that's what ABSA wants to bring about today. And that's what this whole talk is actually about. Listening to you guys, getting your feedback, listening to where's your pain points, and see how best we can assist you. And we have many of our stakeholders in the rooms that is part of us, part of the Kasi Talks business, where we're going and saying, let's work together. Let's nurture and coach these entrepreneurs, guide them, because many people know I must have a bank account, but how do you run that bank account? How do you get yourself prepared for funding? What are the little things that you need to do to manage those bank accounts? How do you read your financial statements? How do you draw your cash flows? How do you draw up a business plan that when a bank looks at it, this is what they want to see? This is the things that we want to do for our local economy and the local entrepreneurs, so we can assist you and guide you, and we want to walk the relationship. It's not just come in, open the bank account, and you're another client of ABSA's. We want to be the partner, we want to be the home where you say, this is my home, this is my family, and that's how we grow part of the Khasis. Okay, and with that, ABSA's launched the ABSA Evolve bank account. If you look at that bank account, it takes an entrepreneur from the start right up to being a corporate client. You can change your account at every stage. It doesn't restrict you to the normal traditional banking accounts that we used to have in the future. It's actually really assisting young entrepreneurs. If you look at our Evolve Light package, there's no monthly fees. There's transactions is to help that business grow to a certain extent. When you grow to a next level, your account moves with you in that level. We also have Small Business Fridays, and it's linked to our ABSA reward programs. So if you have a business account with us and your merchant account with us, we register you on a small business platform. It's part of the ABSA rewards. You get, every Friday clients can come in, and if they got the ABSA cards, they swipe their cards, they get double points on the ABSA rewards, the individuals, and the entrepreneur gets back a 400 Rand back into their accounts, which covers for the merchant service fees, plus this free advertising on the ABSA website for these things. But entrepreneurs in the township don't know these things because we haven't been out there. We haven't been telling them these are the things that we have for them that they can use and to benefit them. We have the ED side of it where we go and we coach them and mentor them and provide them with little things that they can do to run their businesses. We have alternative funding, where 51% black-owned entrepreneurs can apply for funding. But how do we get you ready for those sort of things? And this is where ABSA wants to be involved in. Thank you.
We're going to move on to the first of two speeches we have before our panel discussion. The first one is from a local SMME, Groupman IT, Uputkanya Dansi, founder and owner, I believe, of Ukula Tech, which functions in how many areas, Butkaya? In many areas. Uputkaya is doing okay. But please, Butkaya, please share your story about Ukula Tech and the growth that you found.
Let me just start on the origins of Ukula Tech. I used to work at Rhodes University. So one of the key things that I saw with the students that used to enroll every single year is that these guys get scholarships because they're A students. They get to Rhodes, it's a whole different master. The research. You never use the computer, you never use the internet to do research. So you get there, you fail, you plug out, you get chucked out of the system. And yet you're talking about an A student. So this is why I started Ukula Tech. This was me trying to bridge that gap of saying, who opens Telkom? Yeah, Telkom doesn't want to get connected. Doesn't want us to get connected as Lalini. Vodacom, they don't prioritize connectivity in townships and rural areas. So I started in 2014 doing research throughout the Eastern Cape, looking at labs that have been installed in schools, which ones are live, which ones are working. Found out about 96% of the schools that have been given tablets, they are not functional. They've been sitting in the storerooms, no one is using it. So then I came back, looked at the results in the research, is where does one start? And the only way you can start where is when you start small, start where you stay. You can't change what's happening throughout Africa in one day. So then I started Apeluction Menchalape Extension 5. That's where I started my ISP. It's a typical story from a garage as well. I managed to get a Telkom line. I think my success story for Ukula Tech was sharing the internet with my neighbor, who was a girl who was at VG. First time she used internet, she managed to graduate from VG. A student went into Rhodes as well. So that was my first success story as Ukula Tech. So from there we've expanded Ukula Tech. We've got currently in Grahamstown alone Eloction, we've got over 700 clients on Wi-Fi. And then in Grahamstown, we've got over 1,000 clients, including fiber clients. So we built Colatech mainly focusing on township, like I say, to bridge that digital divide. In doing so, 2019 was a wake-up call for everyone. So one of the key things that we realized is that in a block of 100 houses, you're only connecting 2 or 3 houses. So what we did, we decided to start sponsoring schools, connecting schools, because that's where the cluster is, where the majority of kids are. So in Grahamstown, we've connected about 31 schools, which we give free internet. We give them free 100 meg line. In doing so, we've partnered up with foundations like Click Foundation, where they come in and give free tablets, they give free educational tools for the schools. Same thing that we're starting to do in Motherwell as well. We've partnered with, we've got about 4 schools now that we're giving out free internet as well. So that's a legacy that we're continuing as giving back to the community. It has not been an easy journey. I've had sleepless nights. I think one of the crucial things when you're starting a business is finding that niche. And niche means coming with a product that is viable for your customer. And that has been the hardest thing to do, getting equipment for the right price for the customer, because it boils back down to the cost of getting the internet, which it took about 2 years to finally get right, testing different equipments and all sort. But then, yeah, another big thing was that funding. This project has always been self-funded, because I've got this belief that there's enough clients there to boost your business, basically, to make your business viable. There's no need to go quickly get funding. Your funding should be in a place where you want to elevate your business. But when you start off, this is where you test the true identity and brand identity for yourself. This is how you know if what you're doing will be a powerhouse or is it for a project. That's my belief. But in saying so, we've partnered now up with guys like Vodacom, Frogfood, OpenServe, Natural Fiber. We've got a national license now, so we've got fiber coverage in South Africa, and slowly we are pushing projects now to start across Southern Africa as well. So, yeah.
And again, whenever I hear you talk about Colatech, I'm particularly struck by this thing of mutual benefit, that the growth of your business is dependent on the benefit of the community. And that's the premise of it. And again, such a profoundly niche and unique aspect of the type of spaces and entrepreneurs you found in the room that are fundamentally rooted in how we can build within the people and ensure that as I grow, we grow. And that's really important. We'll move on now to our keynote speaker, Usis Thandeka Golembeki. I don't know where to start in introducing you. So I'll try by just saying Mrs. Thandeka is a teacher, a community activist, a storyteller, and a constant student of people. And I think that's about the most accurate I can get off the top of my head. So over to you, Mrs. Thandeka.
I'm new to Makhanda. I arrived back here after 22 years away on the 1st of July last year. And how do I come to be a broadcaster who speaks about economic development and who speaks about township development? After spending about 30 years in the South African press as editor of Black Enterprise, traveling around the country with President Ramaphosa and introducing the Black Economic Empowerment Commission document, working with my brother, the economist Duma Gubula, and another economist called Andy Brown, visiting community after community, we put together the codes of good practice. And we realize now, many years later, just how many injustices we codified, just how many holes we created in the legislation, just how vacant many legislative spaces were. And then I became economics editor for the whole of SABC, for SABC International. and started a program called Economics Unbound with an AI anchor. I wonder if any of you remember Nana and I. I anchored the show, I was the main presenter, but we also began many shows. One of them was SME on Point by Diabo Setu, which then became like so popular nationally. It became sort of a agony aunt, a dear Dolly for small businesses. Dear Diabo, we want to scale our business, where can we get some money? Dear Diabo, I'm competing with foreign national and they're squeezing my business. Dear Diabo, I'm dealing with toxic competition, what do I do? And then I worked for the Financial Mail as associate editor, and I was very vexed by the emerging patterns of the South African economy. Now, forgive me for the first part of my address to you being a little theoretical, but I'll explain why, and I've got a proposal to make, which is practical. So I asked myself, starting at the Financial Mail, after an unfortunate stint at ESCOM, where I whistleblew on corruption and exited myself very swiftly before they dealt with me. So, I asked myself a question for many years, and that question was simply, what is the most important price in any economy? So I wonder if anybody would hazard a guess or has superior knowledge on this one, but I'll tell you what my response was. It's the price of money in your pocket. It's the price of the rand in your pocket, the cost of capital. It's the biggest constraint to economic development in our country. Why? Because of our choice to constrain ourselves through macroeconomic planning and monetary policy. We began in 1996 to run this economy, not in the interests of you and I and any small business people, but in the interests of the banks. Excuse me, I said. Because their stock in trade is interest, it's money. And we decided to run very high interest rates. Normally you calibrate your interest rates to the interest rates of your main trading partners. Even as China reduced the cost of the renminbi and started what was a currency war with the United States over the dollar, we were running very high interest rates. Why does that punish us? Even as our main trading partners, which were Europe, collectively the EU zone, were running at interest rates at around zero when they were responding to the global financial crisis between 2007 and 8, and they reduced interest rates in order to economically recover. Why were we running these high interest rates? Because the most unstudied example of regulatory capture is the South African Reserve Bank. Because the central bank determines the interest rate at which the economy operates. So the central bank, Liseja Khanyago, my former classmate, determines the rate at which your business can grow. How? Because the rate at which you borrow money to scale your business is very high. So in the face of punishing interest rates, you're unlikely to develop your factory, you're unlikely to employ more, but the bank is likely to smile all the way there because it's a punishing exchange rate. But frustrating you and I from scaling up our businesses, our lives, our services, and so on, this also involves a frustration to GDP. How so? GDP is the sum total or the composite figure representing the sum total of goods and services exchanged in any economy. So yes, there is a township economy. So why would we be frustrating GDP? Because when you hike interest rates, you deindustrialize yourself and you create a huge problem with employment. In fact, the deindustrialization trend becomes one of the biggest features of your economy when you're running your economy for the financial sector and you financialize your economy. How so? We ran from 1996, 15 years later, we still didn't have a proper industrial plan. DTI had minor plans, but not an industrial plan. How did that affect us? We lost factories. If anybody comes from Cape Town, do you remember the garment district, Cape Town? It's all gone. Do you remember the Dimbaza complex? Gone. Do you remember the plate factories here in this area where we have slate? Gone. Because the productive sector cannot take high interest rates. There are other things like foreign competition and so on. When you're competing with highly subsidized productive economies like China, they take over because they are highly subsidized. But if you open up your economy and you have got high interest rates, you are killing both small businesses and the productive sector, which is your manufacturing, your industry, the people who make things. You are also punishing your exports. So we're a mining economy. To say that we were made from mining is an understatement. The mine labor system that separates our families was created from, the need to go and export these minerals. To demonstrate this further, we are the world's leader in the production of platinum group metals. But we don't own the value chain. Why? Because we don't beneficiate, we don't manufacture and add value to our extractives. We just dig out and send it to the ports via Ngoga and so on. So we don't manufacture. So as a people, we eat more than we produce. That's not good for anybody's soul. If you take it at the personal level, in Africa we say don't take more than you give. Don't consume more than you produce. It's not good for any society. So this hole in the middle of the or in the middle of the economy that makes us unproductive and makes us not produce things, it also suppresses our exports. And so our ability to earn forex and service our debts becomes also impaired. So what are the four meaningful constraints to the development and growth of the economy in the townships? These are the four meaningful constraints to economic development in our country. The first one is history. History. Why? Because you and I, because we are black, our parents were forbidden from doing businesses in the townships. And if they did illegally, they would get swooped on, and they would be selling zoo and snuff at the corner shops, and the police would raid them. So as a culture, we did business subversively. How does that impact our culture? Even today, we get beaten out of business by Somali because we've never developed in our homes the mindsets of investing in each other and in each other's businesses. And also, how does that affect us? Because we don't formalize our businesses, because we always anticipate that the state will claw back through tax or through other punitive measures, because we have experienced the state punitively. So, not formalizing our businesses is a problem, because we can't sign up for benefits and we miss out on many procurement opportunities. And also we miss out on creating a culture among ourselves of supporting each other. Now, Njengele and I were speaking on the way here. I'm apologizing for plagiarizing him in advance. So he was telling me a very familiar story. He, and I don't like the word about my friend, but perhaps we should befriend in order to learn. Now, he went to see some Somali business people, and he went into their premises. There were 3 layers of security just before you got to their big guns. And when he got to the big guns, there were families there. And the support network was visible. But so was their capital, because this was a board meeting, well-furnished, well-oiled machinery, occupying a very important commercial space in our country, but also very powerful. And what made them powerful was not the fact that they have the money, but what made them powerful is that they arrived with nothing. They walked from Mogadishu, but they have social capital. They have got social networks, and they have what Sharia banking has taught us as South Africans, but not enough of us. They've taught it mainly in the Indian communities, which is that when my child gets to the age of 18, rather than give them a car or another thing, I buy them equity in a viable business. And I buy future revenues. Rather than buying my child some crocodile shoes and to celebrate their graduation, I buy them equity in a going concern that's listed on the Johannesburg Stock Exchange. And rather than borrow you money, I cut you some equity in my business, Wena Makelwane. And I'm invested in your success rather than in your failure, because your success is my dividend. So they've been able through Sharia, because they don't believe in interest. Rather than giving people interest, they get them to reinvest in the business. So these cycles of investment and reinvestment over time, and these cycles of what would have been compound interest, have got what we call in economics a multiplier. And that multiplier is like a wizard of magic. It creates wealth. It's what the Islamic sovereign wealth funds of Dubai and Qatar did to save the rest of the world, even as they borrowed the West money during the financial crisis, to yank the world out of the crisis that the world had gotten into because of those fake bonds that they were doing in America. So what do? They don't invest only in hot money, these paper money. They invest in actual brownfields businesses you can touch, businesses that were described by you, my brother, businesses you can walk into, but businesses that have the familiarity of neighbors and friends and society. And these are the businesses of our children, our neighbors, our churchgoers, and so on. So unless we create things through small businesses and learn to scale them up, we will not be able to build deeper bonds between ourselves, because money creates those bonds. And money is a power that can either destroy relationships if you use it consumptively, but if you produce together, it can deepen relationships. And money can create what blood relationships cannot create over time. In the Indian community, money circulates a number of times in that community before it goes into another jurisdiction, like money circulates in Fortsburg, in the Indian community of Johannesburg, before it goes into town a few meters away, a few kilometers away. So would that in indigenous African communities of South Africa would find ways of investing even small amounts in each other and investing in things that yield products. It's only when we become that powerful force, that powerhouse, that we can then leverage our collective power to lobby government to lower interest rates. Now, they'll tell you that the Reserve Bank only creates interest rates or behaves that way in using the lever to control inflation. They will say that this is constitutionally determined. Well, hey, it's man-made, and the second thing is that it's not the only lever of monetary policy. Only the ignorant call it the only lever of monetary policy. For example, in China, if you come there as a collective of people who produce things, maybe you produce furniture, and you approach the Central Bank of China, which is called the People's Bank of China, you get a preferential interest rate. You get a different interest rate if you're an exporter because you are earning the country money. So you can only lobby for these kind of things when you can show the central bank power. And that power you can only show the central bank or the politicians when you're organized. So there is no business community that doesn't act out of collective interest. So this atomization and individualization of business life in South Africa is an anomaly globally. Even if you look at illicit businesses and you look at the way the Italians took over huge portions of New York, it is through collective action. Maybe it was mafia, call it what you want, but in economic terms it is the same thing. It's through social capital. If you don't have social capital, prepare to be the last in class. If you don't have social capital, prepare to liquidate your business. If you don't have social capital, prepare for diminishing returns. Your children, as each generation progresses, become poorer and poorer. So, what are we going to do here and now about social capital? What are we going to do about the reality and the meaningful constraints that face us as a community of business people and as a community in general? This is where my proposal comes in. Now, Makhanda has no tertiary, no secondary industry. The last of it was chowed by COVID. Am I not right, LED? So, employment is crucial because it's employment that helps you leverage a side hustle. While you're teaching somewhere, while you're working somewhere, your side hustle is that hairdresser or is that jigeleza. And if we don't address the productive sector issues here in Makhanda, we will continue to have these punishingly high levels of unemployment. 70% unemployment for Grahamstown in the African community. Now that's a bloodbath, and it's surefire confirmation of economic mismanagement. Now we must square up to the city and what they've done to us. But more importantly than just the naive confrontation about the outrage of injustice, we must take control. There is no business community in the world that doesn't line up politically to take control. Sorry, but it's just the case. Especially at municipal level, because you are deindustrializing yourself. Because one of the benefits of modernity is free running water. The reason we are living longer and we've got modern longevity as human beings is free, clean running water. So if you want us to live less, you want us to last less, to want to increase the disease burden and blight your human capital, you're going to fail as a business community to address the water situation by your refusal to take control of the toxic politics that are the meaningful constraint to your success as a people, as a business community, and as families and as individuals. So the other thing that we need to take control of is this electricity thing. You cannot industrialize on the back of insecure supply. You cannot even run welding businesses without security of supply. Now, the society is lining up for alternative energy sources. We better jump in there. Now, the country is also lining up for ways in which to hold those responsible for our lack of security of supply to account. We better line up there as a business community. We can only do it once we're united. The other thing is that you cannot have factories here if the machines are being broken by Ucimicimi. I mean, Ucimicimi even kills your cattle, how much more your industrial size machines. So my proposal is that we go back to the DTI prescripts for industrial development in our country, and you will see that therein lies a way forward for us. What does DTI say about local and gassy economies? It says the following. It says that the reason to support local development and township economies is, number one, to grow the national economy. Number two, to strengthen efforts to raise aggregate domestic demand, mainly through localization of public procurement and intensifications of efforts at industrialization, and to persuade the private sector to support localization and local supplier development. Number three, to step up South Africans' exports. Number four, to create and reinforce policy certainty and program alignment. So, number six is to build a stronger system of industrial finance and incentives to support and secure higher levels of private sector investment and community investment. So, the proposal is that the business people of Makhanda get together, gassy or no gassy, black or white, across different sectors, across different businesses, to, number one, have the process of economic development declared a special, not development zone, a special economic zone. And to have this as one of the special presidential projects, because we are sitting in an economic crisis here. And the crisis will deepen if we do not take control and take the trends and the economic data in a different direction. So it needs leadership, and so some people will have to step up, and LED will have to lead us, because we need the government to commit to placing factories, industrial production factories in this place, and cutting us into equity here, and making it one of the conditions for situating your factory here and getting tax breaks here. Make it employment intensiveness, and number two, local community and collective equity in those developments that will be here. And number two, we need export. We need to, we're close to both harbors. We need to develop products that are exportable. So that export ability will qualify us for various incentives, tax breaks, and so on. So we need to collectively think about an investment with people who can export. So it does require that DTI is heavily lobbied, heavily discussed with, and it does require that we join roads and others in preventing the third tier of our economy, that's the legal fraternity, the professions, and the banks, and so on. From leaving here, we need to get people to stay. So those campaigns are very important, and we need to embark on them urgently to, number one, have a special economic zone declared here, and number two, have a presidential project with special incentives and special investment criteria in the region. The other issue that I would like to address finally is the issue of skills. The skills that we have tended to ignore are those skills that used to be earmarked for people in the colored communities. You remember when we had job reservation? Those are the plumbing, the infrastructure repair, the road works, the maintenance functions, and the electricians, and so on. We need to desperately lobby that as part of the infrastructure repair projects that the municipality must take on, repairing these roads, repairing our ability to purify water, repairing our electrical issues here, that we develop these skills and that some colleges take on the skills development in this regard. Then we must square up to our toxic politics. The ruling party runs a patronage system throughout the country, which means the least deserving, the least meritocratic person needs to be pushed in because and they're going to give us the kickbacks. We need to arrest this thing with kickbacks, guys, because at the end, you have the usual suspects benefiting and everybody is crowded out. This thing amounts to a tax and a barrier to entry for small and township businesses. This toxic politics of paying politicians and paying municipal people and managers, it needs to stop if we are serious about rising collectively. Because what it does is that it creates a situation where I have to pay an extra tax in order to play the game of business. And that tax is a withdrawal from my input costs. And those input costs are needed if I'm going to scale my business in a few years' time. So we need to square up to these toxic politics. We need a conversation with the ruling party because it's the ruling party that's polluted the state conduct. What happens eventually when we don't arrest these toxic politics is that the state retreats. Now the state has retreated in Makhanda. Let's speak the truth. We're sitting here with a dysfunctional municipality, which means basically that there is no state. There is no functional state. The state is in retreat. So umhlali funeka azenzele because the state is invisible. How do we know that the state is in retreat here and that the state has retreated from our lives? If you need a police officer, like I've had 3 break-ins, if you need a police officer, high tech will show up. If you need public broadcasting during the transition period, you go and queue at Pep Store for OpenView or for DSTV. That's private TV. If you need, and these things are rights, if you need an ambulance, or you're going to call somebody else who works there and you're going to incentivize them financially to take your sick one or beloved one to settlers before they die. Now, that is proof positive of the retreat of the state. But we pay tax, so we cannot afford the retreat of the state. Because we've paid for the state, so we need to retake control of the state and dictate to the state what it is that Umhlali wants, because we've got it the wrong way around. The power belongs to Umhlali, no business, and not to the elected representatives. Zithunywa zethu ezi. the power is with us. So basically, economics tells us that economic power goes to those with initiative. If initiative fails us, we must be prepared to cede economic power and to live in poverty. I don't know for you, but for me it's not an option. Thank you so much.
Already that's growing, and I need to contain the local because
I think for us as a municipality, our role in essence to what Puputsake has raised is that we need to create, as a municipality, we need to create an enabling environment for people's businesses, especially the township economy, to thrive. And fortunately, I think in the past 5 years in Makhanda municipality at LED level, it's been a very intense conversation to the point that where our current LED strategy is predominantly focused on how can we improve or enhance the township economy. And I think one of the first things that is very important or a key player in unlocking that those opportunities in the township is that one, we need to unlock land or provide spaces where these businesses can operate and they can thrive. And obviously we are bound by regulations that we need to make sure that we have spatial development frameworks that show transition, because transition is really needed and diversification is really needed in Makhanda, because we can safely see with, like, it doesn't even need a professional, but you can see just driving around that you see the change in economic dynamics from the east, from the west side, which is town, and you're driving into the township. That there's very little hype of activity from a visual eye on the east side, and that's something that we as a municipality have a due responsibility to do. Secondly, it's from the infrastructure side. We have a responsibility to provide infrastructure, which is water, electricity, and decent roads for people to be able to navigate their way through those economic spaces. And it's been a huge issue of the municipality, and I think the speakers, previous speakers have addressed the challenges that they, or more the concerns actually, that they have surrounding those things and how they've affected the township economy, where in itself it's not even it hasn't received a big enough platform in the economic space, and yet it's dwindling even more because we are not providing them with the basic of services. And one of the infrastructure now that has been recently introduced is the broadband side of infrastructure, that we as a municipality have created a platform for F&Os to come into the municipality and put in infrastructure that will allow businesses to have a faster connection to broadband. And it started on the west side, now we're trying to bring it to the east side as well. So I think that's the space where we as a municipality play in. But one of the things that we always, I find that it's the bigger challenge that we have currently in trying to build that relationship or bridge that gap between municipalities and the township economy is the red tape. And regulation has basically pretty much become that, where you find that the more formalized corporates are, that the regulations are favorable to them to expand, but it's not favorable to the smaller person to start up and then excel in that space. And it's something that we need to address in platforms where we have to review our legislation. It needs to start speaking to the masses. And it's something, it's an ongoing conversation, and I always advocate to the SMMEs that come into my offices that you need to start taking position in the municipality. As much as there's an administrative wing and there's a political wing, but for it to operate as a well-oiled machine, there's a component which is the community, and it needs to be very frequent in terms of making sure that the municipality accounts to their roles and their responsibilities. And where there are gaps or shortfalls on our side, that it is raised and they make sure that the municipality, in whatever regulations or frameworks that you establish, they are customized and they are favorable to the community of Makhanda, and not a generic document that does not speak to the current conditions or in favor of the community of the municipality. So yeah, that's my input. Okay. Thank you.
So basically at APSA we look at the solution specifically for BE customers, meaning 51% or more black-owned businesses where we are able to assist, and I'm just coming in where she left off, small enterprise businesses with number one, there's 3 pillars that we cover. We look at non-financial support, where we offer mentoring, coaching, funding ready programs, depending on that relevant business need, that we're able to support that business, number one, because we understand as a small business, financial support or access to funding is not the first or the main thing that a business needs, but it's how do we walk that journey with that small enterprise business, giving them the right coaching or mentoring or accelerator programs, whether it's a startup accelerator program or growth accelerator program to move your business to the right direction. But we'll obviously assess that on a case-by-case basis to understand what's the need of that business. The second pillar that we look at is access to funding, and then we would have walked that journey with that entrepreneur, where we actually then look at the options which is available for these SMMEs. So we understand traditional finance is normally the problem that most SMMEs sit with, specifically needing collateral or security. So at ABSA we have a product called Alternative Lending Solutions, where we are able to assist the entrepreneurs, specifically SMMEs that fall within the category of 0 to 50 million turnover per annum, where we understand the business director, understand their business, they have experience in running that business. There's a contract to back that business to understand how they will repay that loan depending on what is needed, or whether it's an asset that we need to finance, or if it's working capital that you need as a business. And we obviously look that this business will be profitable and we're able to support, whether it's a 5 million term loan that you need or whether it's an asset that you need, without having your traditional collateral security in place. The business must be 51% black-owned business. It must be a South African registered business. Obviously, those are the requirements we do look at. I know possibly the next question will be, we also look at your credit bureau as SMMEs. However, if your debt has been paid up or there's payment arrangements in place, we look at those things because we understand during COVID, your business possibly went down, but we are able to explain those things. As long as we have proof that it has been now paid up or is in place, we can then recommend that. So it's not like your normal traditional finance that's needed, but it's specifically ring-fenced to that relevant category. The third thing we also look at is access to markets. So one of our things that we do have as ABSA is smart portal procurement, where we actually allow SMMEs then to register on there, and that's a platform for that business to be able to then obviously leverage off that opportunities. I know Lioness of Africa for women businesses is also some of the things that we get involved in, but there's definitely opportunity which is not your normal traditional finance. Also, when we look at big corporates under access to funding is where ABSA actually then signs a possible MOA, memorandum of agreement with ABSA, depending on the big corporates or big government institutions, where these suppliers then will benefit with ring fence around this. But it's obviously if there's a memorandum agreement in place. So that's basically from my side as ABSA. These are the tools or the things that's in place. It's not ring fence for any business, but specifically to South African registered BEE businesses with a relevant turnover, because we understand that as businesses, we don't have that collateral security in place, number one. And SMMEs is the backbone of this economy. If we don't grow them, there will be a spin-off in 2 years. We understand that the economy will not grow, job creation will not happen. So I think that's the main key drivers. We as a bank will not exist if you don't exist. And I think that's it from me.
Two things that I picked up from both of you, but I will start with ABSA. You mentioned on funding for SMEs, you guys will find out to funding them. So as UCC, the other one is that as a collective, we should be able to negotiate on interest rate. So my question is ABSA ready for such a collective to come and negotiate on interest rates on terms if they would like funding?
So Before I answer your question, I would like to say that we're here to listen. This is the second one that we attended. We often say that before we build any solution for a customer, you need to understand what the actual needs are. And that's why I'm starting off by saying we are here to listen, to understand really what the needs are. Now there was a couple of things said, and then Shana touched on it. I'm sorry, I missed your name now. Sistandeka. So there was also quite a few things that was said. And the common theme was unemployment. It was mentioned by a lot of people. And I think one of the speakers also touched on the importance of SMMEs to solution exactly that gap in South Africa. And I'm of the belief if we enable SMMEs to grow and reach their peak, we will be part of that solution to close the gap on unemployment. And without repeating what Shana said, there is key involvement from an EBSA perspective to ensure that we get our SMMEs. And I always say what gives me a lot of gratitude is to see how a business owner come with an idea, and within the SME environment we can enable him to take that idea from start and start growing that business. And now business has been set up like that. So often when you think banking, you think about products and offerings. But from an EBSA perspective, we've got a piece of our business that can really enable you to give you the advice to get you to that level that prepare you for any finance that you've got. And I've listened to Sia, I've listened to you. You've started your businesses, and your business is at that level that you have grown it in difficult environments, and you've done it, and well done on that. Pricing is often a solution that you need to do based on what you see. And it's difficult for me to commit on pricing without seeing anything. But it's a conversation understanding what is the business that I'm dealing with, what is the risk for that business, how has it been set up, and collectively we make a decision about what the pricing is. Now, I spoke about earlier about we're here to listen. And I hope I'm not going to miss, you said Sitstandeka, ne? That's it. You spoke about the electricity crisis that we've got. And again, because as a business we listen, SMME was the first rolling out a ground solution for SMMEs that have properties that want to put solar in place. And then there's none of that in the market. And if you really, as an SMME with a property, if you think about the grant that we offer as EBSA, together with the benefits that SARS are giving you, you can start making the calculation to see what the benefit is, and it really makes it more and more affordable to do that. And we're really here to share knowledge. And if you look at the room, there's a lot of EBSA representatives here. I'm looking after SME in the Eastern and Western Cape. And we're really driving this part from a Kasi talk perspective, because there's a need to enable SMEs. That's why we're here. A solution and offerings will be different to what it will be for Sia than what it will be for me. But after these discussions, I mean, we've got, within Grahamstown, we've got bankers that sits here. I've got area managers that travel through these areas, where we can really set up engagements to really start talking about how do we enable you to grow your business. I said to Sia earlier as well, And he's very passionate about SMMEs and CASI talks as well. And the more we engage, we can start sharing knowledge, something that he's seen that I might have missed, which can enable me to start putting things in place in our business to improve the solutions that we give. We've spoken about when in these kind of sessions, and I haven't looked at the list of business owners that are sitting here. I always say when we get together like this, the one piece that we often forget, and again it was also mentioned by you, is the ability to understand how each of us can add value to each other. And never forget the crucial part, because there might be business owners here that are sitting with a solution or service offering that might benefit the next one. And these kind of sessions is really for me to get together and talk about what am I offering, what is my gaps, and how can somebody possibly in this room assist me to grow my business further. So that is the important part of getting together like this. I've touched on the importance for SMEs. Now I've gone slightly further than your question, but just to close off again with your question, speak to us, and we open for business. Know that. I think our presence here and our involvement from a CASI perspective is talking to that. And I've been in SME for many years. This is where everything starts. The corporates don't exist without starting somewhere. And I have a lot of respect for entrepreneurs, because you are not successful in your first try. And Shana mentioned it. From a banking perspective, yes, there's certain things that we need to look at. But there's also certain times when we can look differently to things. But again, we need to understand the individual context and then make a decision on that. So thank you for the question. I hope I answered your question. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The different speakers here spoke about this idea, I call it the collective duty and the communal identity. The one that recognizes that I am nothing without the people next to me helping to anchor me forward. Sister Thandeka, you spoke a lot about leveraging that social capital and using it quite powerfully for change. There was the element of reclaiming the economy that you opened with your Councillor Wenja. But Sia, you also spoke a bit about this element of some of these statistics and the extent to which this economy, not yet fully quantified, is quite powerful. And we lack even a formal assessment of it. And I link into what Ubukai was saying around the necessity of understanding that if you believe into your community, you grow out quite stronger. But for me, the question, I think it might be something to prompt, and I'd love to hear a bit from everyone. Is the priority around formalizing the nature, status, and extent of this economy? Or is it around organizing it a bit better? Because those are two different things. And the formal structures can often be quite exclusive to small entities coming in, but organizing is where you leverage that power. So from your different perspectives, what do you think the priority is? Not that they're mutually exclusive. And how would you suggest we go about moving in that direction? So Kalabwe Thandeka, to put you on the spot.
The issue of land. In economics, we say that there are three factors of production, first being land. The issue of holding title deeds and the rollout of title deeds and secure land ownership and tenure is crucial to the success, the economic success of an area, Nangin or Negas. So I don't know how successful that whole rollout of title deeds has been. But it goes to what you said, ma'am, about collateral. Tenure over a piece of property is it partly solves the issue of collateral and bankability. So would that we would succeed in the campaign to roll out and transform those 99-year leases into secure family-owned title deeds, so that people who own these businesses, like businesses at home, like creches and baby schools and spazas from home, can also have the security of that asset that they operate from. The issue of collective investment, public ownership, collective ownership, is a crucial one. We've had how many years of since gear was introduced in '96?
27.
Yeah, we've had 27, as long as Mandela was in prison, we've been assaulting collective ownership. And why am I saying that? Because gear was the single biggest assault on public goods, things that we own together as the public, and pro the privatization and the individualization of ownership and so on. So that creates that character of our economy, even at the local level, where you only look after yourself, your own business, and you go to the bank for yourself and your own interests. That, while good, has limitations. In the face of a national crisis, because the problems you have in your business, depending on your sector, are likely the problems I'll have in that business at that stage of the development of that business. And so it's more than just me and you and having an individual problem. It's a national problem. And as indicated, we have a national crisis in this regard. Now, I once went to Indonesia. As economics editor, I went with my deputy. We went to visit the institutions responsible for small businesses. Now, they have a state bank. I'm sorry I'm not saying this to crowd out private banking. I know private banking is very important. But they have a state bank that gives seed capital to small businesses. And they have an interest in, as a bank, in investing in those businesses and providing the support functions that ABSA does support, like journeying with the entrepreneur. And they then reissue capital to small businesses upon reaching a certain threshold of turnover, so that you can scale beyond a given level of turnover. So they also give as a country tax breaks. If you are solving my unemployment problem as DTI and finance, come on, give me a tax break. Set a different corporate tax rate for me, depending on my annual turnover. Then they give incentives for particular industries. Like if you are in an exporting industry, if you're in manufacturing and we're solving a big manufacturing or productive problem in the country, give more tax breaks and give more incentives to productive sector people, and give the people who've got lower barriers to entry less tax breaks. Yeah. For example, it's easier, there are fewer barriers to entry if you're going to be in my favorite business, which is preschools. That's less because it's Marie biscuits, Oros, and a bit of education. So there are less areas to entry than if you're going to manufacture something critical in this economy. So what I'm saying is that there are individual solutions, yes, go for them, let's go for them, but there are these things that we need to get collectively. You cannot have sectoral tax breaks unless you've organized to lobby for them. You cannot have a consideration from the gentleman from ABSA in a business unless you have got a consortium and you have invested in each other and you can show a viable business plan, and you've done your projections in such a way that they align with the growth of the particular sector. But you can't argue for the growth of the sector unless you're organized. So we are in this crisis together. I mean, I can't see any way out of this but by giving each other and family members equity, sometimes give it for free. Like you've roped in stakeholders into your business, and you're going to be powerful in the education sector precisely because your product speaks to education and multiplies educational outputs, and because you have offered stuff for free initially, and then down the line you will harvest the benefit and the dividend, and may you grow from strength to strength, honestly, both of you.
Thank you very much.
Asked or adopted the Makhanda East Precinct Plan. I'm not sure, I didn't hear you touch on it. Okay. That precinct plan essentially seeks to create a special economic zone in Makhanda East, and so that you can ensure that you encourage a township economy. Probably then the next discussion on that Makhanda East precinct plan is we should probably look at preferential tax rates and probably preferential municipal rates, so that you can actually encourage local economic development through an SEZ or an industrial development zone. Given that I don't think we are big enough to be an SEZ, but we could be big enough to be an ITZ.
Please explain that acronym.
Okay. So the special economic zones are the bigger industrial zones, such as Kocha, Isla, that one is ITZ. Yeah. The one that's been built, automotive in Tshwane, that's a big one, and in Western Cape, Saldanha Bay, SEZ. Those are bigger, and they are closer to the ports though, except for the Tshwane one. And then you've got an industrial development zone which is slightly smaller, with a different preferential rates than the other one, but still serves the same purpose of encouraging industrialization and development. The second part, or the second point was that I completely agree that where there is provision of world-class infrastructure, basic services, and lack of good governance insofar as the municipality is concerned, that's not a business-friendly environment, because it means, or it's not indicative of a place to invest your money in. You've got Carrara, for example. When they export, they need to be worried about their products being damaged along the road. And once you treat, and this is a stance or an argument we've always taken from an LED side, is that basic infrastructure becomes our business because our businesses are suffering. All of the challenges that we face become our problem as well, because we are mostly concerned about the economic value and the economics of the city. And part of that, we were very happy when Makhanda Circle of Unity said, no, let's create a local governance. Not a local government, but a local governance where almost every player plays their role in ensuring that we take ourselves out of the quagmire that we are in. and that is led by Makhanda Circle of Unity, so that you are able to ensure that you don't postpone economic development because of the challenges you have, but everyone becomes a part of solving that problem so that you can ensure that there's economic development. The last point, or to answer your question now, on formality or organizing. When I came into the portfolio in 2021, I could not understand why there's different chamber of commerces. Your Grahamstown Business Forum and your Makhanda Black Progressive Forum. And I thought, so I then asked, no man, we must reconcile these and put them under one chamber because I want to speak to one business community. And what then became apparent was that these are two chambers of commerce with different interests and different understanding of the economy of Makhanda. And up until you can actually address the different economic interests, you can't unite them. So firstly, address them, address what is required on the east side, address what is required on the west side. Once you've done that, you can reconcile them and have one business fraternity. And that is the work that Councillor Oyi now has to take over to ensure that he is able to reconcile, because you really need an organized business fraternity to ensure that it's strong on how to drive local government and how to drive its own economy. And essentially, local government needs everyone to take charge of the destiny of this city. And you need a united civic, you need a united business, you need a united political activists as well, so that we can get out of toxic politics.
I had a lot to say. I suppose that we don't have much time. But I think from our side, as Kasi Talks Business, I mean, I'm actually very happy with the inputs, and I think it also emphasized the reason why we do what we do, the conversation. Sometimes they get heated, but I think we come as a neutralizer because we want everybody that is here, because it's through the invite that they've got a role to play, whether it's big corporate, it's obviously government and obviously entrepreneurs, because we know from experience and that it's quite a divided a group of people, though they're trying to solve the same thing. And I just want to try to answer your question about being organized and the formalizing of business. I think it's natural that any person who's running a business, whether they start from an informal setup, it's a natural progression, because and it's also understanding the value chain. It's also understanding the beneficiation that comes with that. So it's a natural progression from where I stand. So it can't be a limiting factor. It also depends on I speak now as an entrepreneur myself, that the more you understand the sector that you are in, the more you are able to penetrate, participate in a more value chain and the beneficiation. So it's very important to be organized, and I think that is why we've also decided to say, look, we are being classified as SMMEs, but our problems are not the same as people who are running businesses in urban areas, etc. So we are unapologetic about our agenda in terms of promoting, advocating for township economy, promoting local products, local enterprises, and obviously, more importantly, if we've got success stories of other Kasi entrepreneurs, the intention there is to encourage and motivate, Because if we can't tell the story, then there is no basis of our argument. If we cannot have a finished product that we can highlight and say, these are the guys who have walked the walk, the likes of Tato Maponya, that have done this thing under extreme difficult conditions and environment, but they are the frontiers of the township economy, although they've done it as individuals. So we want to achieve that as a collective. So my point is that there is a need for what we're trying to do, and we appreciate all the role players, and I think I'm quite happy that when we spoke to ABSA, and ABSA said, you know what, we want to understand the space that we are in, and we want to partner with you guys so that they could go back and obviously come up with tailor-made solutions that would assist some of the entrepreneurs. So it's not all that they cannot provide all the solutions. That is why we've got a whole number of other role players that we're inviting into the discourse. So I think there is quite a number of things that must be done in the township, and I think Usisi spoke about the role of government in terms of infrastructure. I mean, it's the biggest problem in the township. You know, if you're looking for infrastructure, you're looking for land, you're not going to get that. The red tape, you know, it becomes a barrier to, and that's why most of us that are running businesses there, I mean, we've got guys that are making shoes, you know, they've got no access to retail space despite the insurgence of malls in the township. So you go to any mall in the township, I mean in Mother, in actual fact, if I look at in PE, there's probably about 6 or 7 malls within a 20-kilometer radius. You go to all of those malls and try to look for one local entrepreneur that owns a shop there. You will not find them because the big guys, when they come in, they come with the national footprint of obviously the partners that they've got, and obviously the requirements for you to own a space in the mall is a barrier to entry. So one of the biggest challenges that is not the absence of products or creativity in the township, it's just that the support services are not there. And the biggest issue, I mean, this is what we are trying to do in Malawi, is that we're busy in terms of the infrastructure development there, containerized development that we want to do, and obviously house local entrepreneurs so that they can start owning the products, the enterprise, and interact with the market that they understand themselves. So my point of departure is that both of these, I call them inputs, are important. Being organized, that means collectively understanding what we want to achieve as a collective, and most importantly, the transition of business from informal to semi-formal to formal. I mean, as I said, I started a business as in a township, informal, and I tried to formalize it as formal. I run a factory now because of that experience that I've gained. So there is no limit from an entrepreneur. It just depends on their desire and their motivation. And to me, that's important. We need to allow that natural progression to take place.
But again, the key statement that you made is the progression, to allow the process to happen. That is very important. I think looking at formal or organized, but the process itself is what depicts from organized to formal. It's the process. That's all I can say. From my experience and from my mentors, what I've seen, it's the steps, it's the time. It's the time, let me just say that the most important thing is that time it takes to perfect, to organize, to put policies in place, to hone your brand, your services, all of those things, it takes time. So for organizing it, yes, definitely. Formalizing it, a big yes as well. For me, that is my...
Just from my side, I want to say it is all about one story at a time. And how do we take the story and build it together as a collective? So one of the things that came out with Kasi Talks business as well when we did it in New Brighton is most of the business are not formalized. They run it and they run their business accounts via the individuals. Not many of them have registered business or running it as a sole prop properly for us banks to take some things into consideration. And one of the things we put into place, and which I will launch it here as well, and with the Matawa, is the Kasi Talks township campaign that we are running, Kasi Talks business, where entrepreneurs can come in and open their Evolve Light with us. They register their businesses, They have internet banking because that's what we need to go. We need to be digitalized. We need to have merchant services, so we're offering you the mobile pay or a merchant device. You bank with us, and on month 4, what's in for the customers, we're giving them a 2,500 stock subsidy back into their account. So on month 3, we'll pay 1,500, depending that you have done 2 debit card transactions. There's merchants running through your merchant device, and your main account is running through us. And then we're putting 1,000 rand in a fixed deposit, because we also said collateral is always not a house or a thing. Collateral can be an investment. So how do we build that investments for individuals? So we're giving you a fixed deposit. We're putting 1,000 rand there for 12 months, which will be fixed. And then after 12 months, obviously that's earning interest. You can put money in there, and at the end of the 12 months, the 1,000 rand comes back to you as well. With that, we're offering you the free cash flow management program, which is part of our Evolve package. We're offering you we partnered up with SM Tax. So if you want to register your business and it's not registered, and you want to open a PTY, you can go with SM Tax. They're giving you a discount of 50%. So it'll cost you only 175 rand if you go via SM Tax to register your business. And with SM Tax as well, they do your whole accounting system that you can go with them, and you're going to get that 50% discount if you're an ABSA client. So this is the campaign that we're running within the township. It's only ring-fenced for the township economy, because we know that the businesses need to grow, and you need to really register as a business and not run your business through your personal account where your personal income expenditure is going through the and your businesses, and you can't differentiate between the two. And then the leg of the entrepreneur development through Shana. These are the things that we want to come back and give to the community. So thank you for giving us this opportunity.
I think something that we just missed, often we don't talk about it. And we call it estate planning, where we've got somebody here as well that basically can assist us from that perspective. We call them financial advisors. And often as business we neglect that part of our business. And we've seen so many times where successful businesses, irrespective of the size, once the key stakeholder, once something happens to that individual, the business go under. And all of us build our business based on what we want to leave behind for our relatives. And that's another offering that we offer from an ABSA perspective, where it doesn't cost you a cent. But we will sit with you and we will do an analysis of your estate, both in your business capacity, but also in your personal capacity, because you can't look at these things separately. You need to look at it as a whole. And then I want to ask the business owners in the room to consider having that conversation with one of our advisors. And there's quite a number in Grahamstown, there's one as well. And have this conversation so that we really can make sure that everything that you are building, that you're also protecting it for your families. Together with it, and I don't want to miss out on that, from a personal perspective, and GB touched on it, we often run business and personal as one. And we see the funds that run through our business account is funds that we can use, and we forget that we need to separate the two. There is a business owner, you need to draw a salary to enable you to see whether your business is really making a profit or not. And we've got the branch manager of Grahamstown here as well. You've got a team of people sitting within the Grahamstown. So really, please talk to your bankers that is local. Speak to your branch manager with his branch team, because there are solutions that talks to each of the business owners and the individuals in the room. GD's talked about mobile pay. It is basically using your, before I say that, when we talk merchants, we all know merchant device, where you need to swipe your card, there's a transaction fee that goes with it, and there's a monthly rental to that. The mobile pay solution from ABSA basically take your cell phone. And there's probably not one person in here that doesn't have a cell phone. And a lot of people don't carry cash with them anymore. But you can use your cell phone as a payment mechanism, and that's where the mobile pay solution come in from an EBSA perspective, which will ensure that nobody leaves your business if he doesn't have cash with him, but he have his business card with him. So these are some of the solutions that we want to more and more, as we engage, share with you, so that you have the knowledge of what is really on offer and how each of these can benefit your business. So thank you for that.
Thank you very much. I think before I make my statement, I'm hoping that you will have another one of your sessions again. Reason being is that I'm looking around the house and I'm not seeing a lot of my SMEs that would have greatly benefited from this discussion. In fact, even open their minds to certain things surrounding the industries that they are in as SMEs, and I'm seeing one or two that have trickled in from seeing my status. So I would really love for this conversation to happen again. And they missed out on a very great speech from Mrs. Thandika that they could have learned a lot from. But I see Sizzle Media is here, so I hope they will publicize the whole thing and then people will be able to pick up on that. I think in closing, from what our MC had to say, I think both are very important, organized and formalized. And I think where the current status of the Makhanda economy is with small, medium enterprises is where it's very disjointed. Disjointed in terms of age difference, disjointed in terms of reasons of why we get into business, disjointed in terms of industries, and I think from an organized perspective, when you organize something, it does not necessarily mean that you have to fit everybody in one room. You can have people in clusters of the same interest or same agenda, and they could try to advance their agendas on a higher platform where things can be changed or they can be assisted in that nature. So I know for a fact that we've got a lot of people, I've had a lot of interactions with people in business where they don't want to grow, they're just okay with their business moving enough so that they can feed their family. So you find ways of how do you help them sustain their business and allowing them to be operating within the environment that they feel safe and comfortable in. And then obviously with the ones that want to advance themselves, how do you then escalate it to a more formalized situation? So I think that's where we need to start in Grahamstown, in Makhanda, where we need to organize ourselves. I mean, looking at simple things, how the Facebook market in Johannesburg works, literally there's a platform on Facebook, people can access anything that they want that will facilitate or assist their business. But you in Grahamstown, people don't even know that certain services exist in Makhanda, so they'll go out and find that exact service that will assist their business or aid their business in Port Alfred or Port Elizabeth and so forth. So I think that's where we need to start, organize ourselves, get that data, get that knowledge or that information out, and then from there, we see how can we advance people's agendas. Just to answer Sister Thandika on the issue of Umhlaba, I think in terms of ownership, it's still very much a challenge of government. That responsibility was given to the Department of Human Settlements, and I think to date, the last transaction we had in terms of transfer and giving out title deed was early 2000s, I think shortly after 2010. That was the last time we had any of those transactions happening in Grahamstown. So it's a gap, but I think we've gotten to a place where we are not using it as a limit in terms of people operating from their houses. So we've created that allowance, and I think as well, what we've done with the bylaw that we have, our spatial planning bylaw, is that we are trying to create a way whereby how one is able to operate from their house in the township is not the same way in the town. The reason why I say that is that they are more advanced in terms of the data that we require as a municipality. So as a municipality, we'd require like a town planner or an architect to submit an application on your behalf so that you can run your business from home, whether it's a medical practice, an architectural practice, and so forth. But looking at somebody who's operating a small business from home, surely they cannot afford those services. So we look at ways of making it easy for them to be able to continue running their services, but at the same time they are compliant, because remember, as an institution, we have to collect on revenue, and revenue comes by means of assessing at times what types of operation happens on properties, and they need to be charged accordingly. So it's going, it's slow, but we're trying by all means. But like I say, from my experience, I believe that it's always worked best when you get the community finding their position in government. Not standing on the outside and feeling as though they do not have control or do not have access to these people. Like Mrs. Tandega says, that you put them there, you elected them there, so you have grounds to give instruction or to push your views or your ideas across to make sure that whatever is approved in council is favorable to the business sector of Makhanda. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ungaibamba Mama. Thank you very much, and I think it's also important just to extend a word of gratitude to everyone who's just taken time on a chilly Tuesday afternoon to engage in these discussions. For the substance of your commitments too, it's really, and what you contribute is really meaningful. I think these are often spaces we take for granted, particularly because the pressures of dealing with day-to-day work and those godforsaken emails that never end make us forget the necessity of conversing. But democracy was built in Greece through conversation, and this is what will actually help to develop and build this economy. I really want to protect the time for people to just chat organically, so I'd like to hand over to the Director of LED of Sarah Batman to do a vote of thanks for us so we can close home.
Thank you very much, Program Director. Let us give the Program Director a great, wonderful hand. Mine is to share a 2-minute vote of thanks. 1 minute to be for me, and then another minute as a request by the outgoing NMC to give obviously a new councillor an opportunity to say thanks. Mine is really to say, I've been in this place for over 15 years. I begin to even grow some element of arrogance when we come to events like this. One is to say, we take the offer as a district in terms of assisting you, in terms of organizing business, and give you the backup offer. Two, the SMEs that are here, I've responded. I've got a network. During COVID, we had a network of plus 113 SMEs across the district. Obviously, people reduce themselves. We have plus 175. We communicated that to that 75 in the district. 2 of them are here from Glambe. They are here. They've moved from Glambe, and they are here. And we have plus minus 20 local Makhanda SMEs, including those that we supported them. We shared that information. They're not here. I know, I understand the frustrations, but sometimes there's that kind of element. Therefore, we are saying to ABSA, thank you very much. And we also have an equal friend, External Bank. Please forgive us. They will offer some very competing offers for SMEs and ourselves, but you are our partner. Thank you very much for making this. But we say, currently we're funding municipalities, we're supporting LMs, plus minus 18 SMEs annually to the value of 1.7 million. We don't have that much. Mostly startups, maximum 200,000, minimum 50. And we realize exactly what you're saying. The systems that we apply are incorrect. They're not giving us the accountability and the reflection in how people manage their funds. Therefore, we also take that offer to be able in a new financial year, those that we approve with my agreement, and those that are currently have been approved funding, we will work with you to ensure that they transport themselves into the mentorship. Those that are new, they take the offer, the electronic systems and the banking system, all what you have just said, so that we improve our ecosystem in funding SMEs. Therefore, those are the commitments that I'm bringing as a way of saying what did we achieve from today's session. On the issue of going back and return this exercise, let's look at what the program looks like for the Growth and Development Summit. We have a Growth and Development Summit planned for the 19th and 20th of July here in Makhanda, Monument Settlement. We will have to look at how we can couch this exercise into that kind of program. I'll speak to my municipal manager so that we are able to move forward in terms of rolling out. The next rollout will be Glambe. The face of Glambe is here so that he is able to see how we're doing it. We will improve as we go along. By the last 7th municipality, I'm sure we will be attracting more and more and more people. Let's not worry about the numbers that are here. Let's worry about those who are responded into a call. Therefore, let's encourage people to respond to these things and in order to assist those that are responding. Yes, we look at those that miss out and in order to be able to don't become compromised in the exercise. Thank you very much to the ABSA. Thank you very much to Kasi team to really make this thing happen. Thank you to the face, the local face, Upopo. She's been our local face in the event. Thank you to the venue as well. Thank you very much to those familiars that are here and also to the provincial treasury. They didn't want to speak, but provincial treasury is also here. We will be working with them as well because they are also a critical state agent that ensures that SME is registered properly in the system so that they don't lose out in the tendering economy. With those, on behalf of the Sarabat district, we will be looking forward to roll up this flag throughout the district, out throughout the 7 local municipalities in the new year, and we hope to improve it better and be able to attract more SMEs to participate in the program. Thank you very much. Let me give over to our new LT to do the last vote of thanks. Thank you very much.
Former LT MMC Councillor Mzo, thanks as well for making sure that I attend. Although it was a little bit awkward for me to actually attend because I knew that the program was well planned before the special council of today. I will just talk on 3 or 4 things. I'll start first with Mrs. Stanley. You are a very strong character. You are an outspoken person. You speak your mind, stick to that. Secondly, I was touched by your words when you were provoking and reminding us as politicians that we are accountable to the community, not to ourselves. And I think that's very important in a democratic society, that we are always reminded that we account to the community because they are the ones who voted us or elected us to be where we are. I think we really need to applaud you for reminding us. I'm not saying we need to be reminded, but I feel like that's what we need to hear from the communities so that we are not relaxed from the positions where we are elected. The 2 things I want to talk about is to take the House into confidence on the issues of infrastructure, water, and the roads. I cannot leave this gathering without talking about those things because they are very important for all the stakeholders that are here. It has not been an easy road for us. But however, I am happy to announce that come 30 June of this year, we will be able to get that 10 million megaliters of water from James Cleaners. It's a project that took almost 10 years, but at last we are getting some. So very soon we will get water 24/7, the same way we used to get water. Secondly, on the issue of the roads, you can see the state of the roads in Makhanda. It's very bad. But I feel very strongly that we have a responsibility to talk about these things and not keep them to us. And that's what we've been doing as the council. Hence, there was a stakeholder session to brief the stakeholders in terms of what are the plans of the institution. There is an investment made by the Department of Transport of 43 million that is going to start, I think, at Cheki, the road from Cheki, upwards, the taxi route to here, this four stop, Masati and Khoja. I think Sarapatman, Tatutum, that man is with you. Please, I'm very much aware that they have started the process to appoint the consultant. And please, the sooner they start, the better. That project includes your Albany Road, the Kalat area. It also includes Samungakacheki when you cross Upayangase Street. I'm not sure, is it the street? It's, yeah, that street. But there's also another one, Makhanda Way, which is done direct by Makhanda Municipality. The consultant has been appointed already, which is going to start from here, from this forest. I think starting from somewhere, from the National Road, when you come in, there's social development, yes, there's also a post office. Going straight that side to Extension 4, where you see the road was built there. So, yes, that's another project. I may not mention all of them. I know that the first phase was done. The second phase, as we speak, I'm not sure if the process of SMM is concluded, but I know the consultant has been appointed. The SMM is Name, it's this one, where we are now. But I'm very much sure that within the next 2 to 3 weeks, we will start seeing action for finishing of this road. So I'm just naming the few because we ought to take the stakeholders into confidence in terms of what are the things that we have put in place this one to ensure that we change the current situation. The unfortunate part as leaders, we cannot say, no, Singapore 2021, we must take ownership. Whatever issues were there in the past, but we must take ownership. But also, I must say, there's quite a lot of improvement in terms of the financial status of the institution. Fortunately, there was MMC of Finance. We have a credible budget, cashback, cash flow right, Councillor Mzo. Although we're not doing well in terms of revenue. By the way, people are not interested in paying the rates because they see the state of infrastructure. And that's what we are dealing with now, to fix the roads, make sure that there is water. Then we are able to engage with the communities to say, but at least you can see that there is a difference. So I'm saying I felt that I wanted to reflect on that one because it's important for investor confidence for Makhanda so that we are on the same page in terms of developments that are going to take place. But the Councillor Mzo, I think he was very passionate of LET. You can see he used to be the youngest, he's no longer the youngest. Councillor Deke took over, she's the youngest. But be rest assured, I know you are wearing size 7. Be rest assured, I'm still young. I'm still young. So thank you very much, much appreciated. I also love the fact that in your conclusion, Mr. Tumo, you are saying that you are going to assist us, because I was going to say the same thing to Ms. Sinai, that let's take the program to what? Let's have a program that is what-based, with all the stakeholders and businesses from each ward, so that we can reach as many people as we can. Thank you very much.